Are civilians being systematically targeted and killed by the cattle herders? Are the figures of the internally displaced population in Eastern Equatoria being exaggerated or falsified? And what is the Council of States doing about the ongoing crisis within the state? Join us as we discuss this and more only on Beyond the Headlines. Our guest on the program is Mr. Edmund Yakani, the Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress organization. He has extensive experience in managing and conducting training and research on issues related to security sector reform, governance, and human rights. Thank you for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me.
What is the present situation in Mongu as some cattle herders have begun leaving Eastern Equatoria and are now heading towards Central Equatoria state?
Thank you very much. Speaking after being on the ground in Mongu, I think what is going on now, where the cattle herders are living, there's a relative peace and security because they are living and they don't have any friction between them and the host community, which normally we describe them as the farmers from Mongu area. So where they're heading to, there's a tendency of fear to, like, for example, communities that are expecting cattle herders to pass through them, they always live in fear. And whenever sometimes they come across community, I don't generalize all cattle herders, but among the cattle herders, there's a few criminals who commit atrocities, things like looting houses of communities that are passing through, killing, and you can see there's already incidents of where citizens are killed because cattle herders are passed through their communities, looting things like phone, money, food that they found in the house. So on their passage, some of them loot communities, which I don't generalize as all cattle herders, but at least a good number of cattle herders that are really causing harm whenever they're passing through a community. And this has created a scenario where some communities are expecting possibility of cattle herders passing through their communities, they start running for displacement. So where they have left, there's relative peace and security. And then where they're passing through, people are living in fear, they run for refuge. And sometimes as they're passing through communities, they cause havoc. But this not only also cattle herders are causing havoc, but also sometimes where cattle herders are passing, they find themselves, they confront themselves with the cattle raiders. And I think my sister now, the word cattle raider is no longer a good word for me to use it. I think I need to say cattle theft, cattle criminals, really, thieves who are stealing cattle. So, and remember, last time I was describing to you, Mongu is located in an area where you have possible communities from the far east of Eastern Equatoria may come down to Mongu to raid because they're used to raiding between them and communities in Kenya or between them and communities in Uganda. And you have other section of other communities in Central Equatoria, like Mondare, likely may have criminal-minded cattle thugs that may need to come and steal some cattle. And you may have some few Murles also who are criminal in mind, may need to cross and attack the Dinka board. And also you might have even Dinka within the cattle herders who are criminals, also who want to grab the opportunity of having these cattle moving and they want to raid them. So that is the situation on the ground. As cattle herders are leaving Mongu, you have generated fear in the communities of some parts of Central Equatoria bordering Eastern Equatoria, or as they're passing through the triangle between Central Equatoria to Jongole, also cattle herders will be facing risk of being confronted by raiders who are also armed who want to raid these cattle. So that's the situation how it is. So wherever they have left, insecurity, wherever they're going to pass, people live in panic, and whenever they're passing, some of them cause havoc, committing atrocities, killing individuals. And now dead bodies have been found for people who get lost after 3 or 4 days. They come to realize that they are killed or they have been chopped with machetes. And normally when you track down, come to realize that this is the areas where cattle herders have passed through and these people have been killed, meaning whether a member of the host community or not a member of the host communities, people are falling as a victim. So that's the situation we're in.
As it's been noted, the conflict between the cattle herders and the communities has led to displacement and killings. Nicholas Jada recently survived an attack by the cattle herders. He sustained gunshot wounds while in Gumbi village of locality Payam. Kenyi from the Kuku ethnic group was not as fortunate. He was killed in Aru Junction. Also, Wonge from Kapwa of Ye, a resident of Aru Junction, was also gunned down. Are there any police force to monitor the movement of the cattle herders to ensure that safety of the civilian population who live along the path where the cattle herders are going to be passing?
There were deployment of both police and military around Magwi in big numbers, but they are static force. They don't move, they don't escort the cattle herders. Or even if they hear cattle herders are coming, you don't see them playing a preventive role of going to make sure that when the cattle herders are coming, they're coming in peace. They don't commit crimes against the host communities. So they're static force. And I think the ideology or the concept behind this heavy deployment is that if there's a confrontation, then go and respond. If there's no confrontation, don't respond. So sometimes you come to realize that people are committing atrocities in a small scale that as such big force will not get prior information in advance. So I wish that this deployment could have been mobile, that moved together with the cattle herders, and even try to play a preventive role. If they hear cattle herders are coming towards this community, they're in advance and make sure that they protect the routes of the cattle herders not coming into tension with the host communities. But there's a heavy deployment around Magwi, both military and police. But besides this heavy deployment, still atrocities are committed, and still herders and farmers are confronting themselves simply because these forces are not moving mobilely together with the cattle herders or trying to put posts that deter cattle herders in coming to contacts with the host communities as the farmers or villages that they are passing through. And for me, the fear is that one of the things that also is really causing a fear on the cattle herders is they're going to go back to Jongole, is will they reach with the amount of the cattle they have exactly as it is to Jongole. As I've said before in my beginning, is that there are also other criminals, cattle herders, who are taking advantage of this movement to raid more from the cattle herders. So it's a question of also the state need to show responsibility on what? One, responsibility to prevent tension between cattle herders and farmers, and also the state need to provide responsibility to assure cattle herders that please move back to your area of origin, and we're providing safety and security on your passage on the route you are going to pass through. So for me, with that responsibility, still confusion and tensions among the cattle herders and the farmers' communities will be witnessed until the cattle herders move all from the areas of where they are now to their area of origin, but still that will leave a gap of tension between farmers and cattle herders. So you might have individualistic incidents where if somebody is from the community of cattle herders found himself in a majority of farmers' community may be eliminated, or where a farmer found himself in a big number of cattle herders ethnic group will be eliminated. So tension will still emerge. And remember, Magwi is on a highway between Nimule, between South Sudan and Uganda. It's the only way that majority of the low-income families are using it as a passage of going back to Uganda or coming from Uganda to South Sudan. So for me, the state really took extra responsibility to repair the damaged social fabric.
There has been an influx of the internally displaced people into Gumbo, as well as the Obama village from places like Aru Junction. What is the current situation of their condition?
Their condition is bad. They're in dire need of assistance. They don't have non-food items, things like mosquito nets. They don't have shelters. They don't have. And of course, these are people who are displaced when the cattle herders are passing on their return back to their area of origin, to Jongole. They have to pass through Aru Junction. So what you call the Wulupo community, which is part of Central Equatoria State, bordering East and Central Equatoria State, or an area called Lokiliri, all those villages are living in tenders of fear. So they have to run to Obama Village, which was, actually Obama Village is mainly a hotel outside Juba, which was established by one of them, our former chief of staff, JJ Okon, is his hotel. So it's turned out from a hotel to an IDP camp, and there's some areas around that in terms of schools, hospitals, also hosting such a number of IDPs. Some of them are really facing the risk that they are being attacked by the cattle herders, their houses have been burned, or their relatives have been killed, or their children have been killed. And some run of fear when they hear rumors about what has happened to some of their neighbors by the cattle herders. So they start moving in advance. Tenders of fear, they start moving into displaced camps in advance. So that is a situation that in Aru Junction and in Obama Village, there's a big number of population that are in need of humanitarian assistance. But of course, that means, so do we have Obama Village as a camp? And when you look from the UN agency's perspective, that no, we need to avoid establishing camp in location like Obama Village, because it's very hard to really bring a camp to an end with the experience we have seen in the POCs in Juba, in Malakal, in Wau, where it is hard when people are displaced and where they start losing trust and confidence on the state for them to go back to their villages is very high. So it's a question of we need to have urgent solution, both from the government primarily, and then government need to be assisted by the humanitarian agencies to avoid the people. And of course, I will tell you, Magui is not the communities of Magui or the farmers are not fond of camp. They don't need to live in camp. They're interested to go back to their villages to farm, but they need safety and security, and they need to make sure that cattle herders are no longer roaming in the communities. And of course, these cattle herders are armed. So you need to avoid that situation for them not to live in Aru Junction or to live in Obama Village as a camp. Otherwise, if their villages are safe, they are ready to return because they are farmers and they earn money out of farming rather than staying in camp where they're given free food.
Dr. Paul Yugusuk, the Archbishop of Central Equatoria State, Internal Province of the Episcopal Church, paid a visit to the internally displaced people in Gumbo. Here is what he had to say.
I'm Archbishop Dr. Paul Yugusuk, the Archbishop of Central Equatoria Internal Province. I've come to visit the IDPs from Nyolo, Aru Junction, Kobi, and Ngeli. They have ran to Gumbo. They are right now in Gumbo in hundreds. So we want to call upon our government to protect our people in all these areas. We are happy that this morning government troops have been sent to Kubi, to Aru Junction. This is an action that is acceptable. Thank you very much, the President, for doing that. But the solution is not only to talk to them and to protect our people. The solution is to ask the people to vacate, to exit the Olubo land and to go to their original places.
Isim tai Ros Luris Sarafino Modi. Ana jam min Aru Jackson. Fi haja hasil jurin na min jua higo bida fe kora gi jura bara. Badag bidakali dan fi kamsina taki der go budu haja taki tano swande be ida. De haja albiga ina baka ferta min Aru. Gwaja lina sedit ya jamaa. Nas dinga biga indu silalin ina lakini nasaru mindu sila. Bei mara indu sila. Be hadidita bisilu hajataki sala sunda bisilu. Asana jabe wai malabis. Yada kutaja sada na magomas wahida na gilibi sana gogi mo fi gidam ta kunya jamaa. De haja alhasilina. Hita hakuma kita mai na beena. Kita njibu lina akil. Mashama bana na bigen fogo asa maruf ma fina ma baraf banda na debe hai wel mlisa. Kita njibu na masama asan kina geni mo fi rokubat. Auta mbana bana na mbukudi na fogo. Kina geni fogo.
According to UN Mission in South Sudan, more than 14,000 displaced people are now sheltered at Magui Central Payam, while another estimated 1,000 are facing dire humanitarian shortages in Ayi. What has been the humanitarian response to the crisis and displacement of the population, namely from leading organizations such as United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, World Food Program, Save the Children, among others?
You know, it is really disappointing how the humanitarian society work in the terms of international players. They have a lot of bureaucratic action. They see the humanitarian situation first is dire, is really challenging, whether for the host community or for the herders that are moving, they're really in need of food. The level amount of food they have is very, 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 very small. So what I've seen is that communities, volunteers from the communities that either the herders or the communities of the host communities, the farmers, are the one contributing. I see a lot of food that are being distributed, clothes and non-food items are coming from people of goodwill or what we call best wishes that are either in diaspora and mainly diaspora within the continent or outside the continent, contributing money for buying things like mosquito nets and food items and send them to the communities as a fast, immediate humanitarian response. While the official humanitarian agencies, like those you have mentioned, they're doing huge work around assessment. They want to assess the situation, how is the situation, where are the IDPs? And here there's a debate that, oh, we're not interested to see settlement in camps. We wish that the people who are displaced should be living within the community. They should be integrated so that we support them within the community. So those debates are going on. So a very huge humanitarian response from the what we call the global humanitarian actors is still not at a reasonable level. It's still very low. So much of the work is assessments are going on, as I'm saying, and when I'm witnessing on the ground. And the debates are coming also that actually some of the humanitarian agencies are sending messages that the leadership of the state in terms of Eastern Equatoria have to put an official request for humanitarian assistance for the people who are in dire need of the humanitarian concerns. But I'm aware that OCHA is doing a lot of assessment planning with WFP. But of course, this is a long process. It's not a process that the decision has been made in one day time so that communities will get the food. So much of the food getting down to the communities are from volunteers, whether it be food items or non-food items that are reaching out to the displaced population. But as I said also is that, you know, when you start introducing humanitarian assistance to such situation where there's a really very low production, everybody will become a displaced. So it's a question of also proper management of data and proper management of expectation of the host communities, because I would rather report myself to a camp and get a free food than waiting where the farming season I can't really predict and there's a movement of cattle in the community. So that increase the tendency of dependency. But of course, this does not mean that we undermine that there's no IDPs. There's IDPs in need die of the food. Their houses are burned, their food items were burned that they have harvested in the last agricultural season, still they need a humanitarian assistance. So there's a need to have a speedy humanitarian response. And remember, rainy season is soon starting. And when the rainy season starts, still you have a tension of or level of fear between farmers and cattle herders, where farmers feel we can't go and farm because we still see cattle herders roaming around, and where there's no shelters, it's going to be a disaster for vulnerable groups like elderly women, elderly men, children, and lactating mother, and sick individuals, whatever who they are, and persons with disabilities. They're going to find it hard if we don't respond in this small window of opportunity of the dry season, where soon the rain season is going to start.
Among the communities in Eastern Equatoria impacted by the presence of the cattle herders and their cattle are the communities of Pageri, Abara, Agoro, Omeo, Ayi, Nyolo, and also parts of Western Tariq County. The governor of Eastern Equatoria, Governor Louise Lebong, has urged the internally displaced population to return to their homes. According to Radio Tamazuj, Governor Louise Lebong stated, "Recently, we've had an influx of cattle herders from Jonglei State, which created insecurity in Mongu County from January to date. We have lost about 18 people, a number of houses got burned, and properties destroyed." The governor went on to say, "We do not want IDPs in Mongu. These people can be assisted from their homes. I know there has been an exaggeration of figures because when there are free things, everyone wants to go and register." Mr. Yakani, are the figures offered by organizations like UNMISS and South Sudan Relief and Rehabilitation Commission, also abbreviated as RRC, being exaggerated and does not account for the actual number of the displaced population in Mongu? Also, based on the governor's statement, are some civilian populations registering within humanitarian organizations out of need to access free food and services despite the safety of their home area?
Obviously, with regard to humanitarian data, the chances or the frequency of you having lack of accurate information or exaggerated information, and specifically when the people behind the data are becoming corrupt individuals that don't take advantage of registering names in order to earn something in return as a food or food for sale to earn income, obviously you can't avoid that chance. And remember, South Sudan is a society living under the world of experience as IDPs or refugees for quite long, since 1983. So the tendency of us using numbers of IDPs or refugees for sometimes for personal gain is that opportunity is very high. So for me, in terms of exaggerations, yes, there's a chances for us to exaggerate the data, but I think time will come when the actual distribution of food come. And that's why where we need to start calling on UN OCHA and WFP to start employing a model system of data management. So to have metrics that you can really confirm the families, actual number of the families or actual number of displaced people, because the chances that people who are tasked to register these names, creating ghost names in order to gain out of their ghost names. And of course, the culture of ghost names in South Sudan is something almost like every public official is used to in education sector and health sectors in order for you to earn something. So if the numbers of IDPs can help those who have the tendency of ghost names to earn gain, they will report it. So that chance is very high. And the chance also of people who might have not been facing challenge that they will be displaced, but because there's a free food, people report to the camps in order to get a free food is very high. So this is where now the quest for leadership is important. We need to have leadership here. First, from the state to play a big role, and hope that, as His Excellency Governor Lobong was saying, that he will use his authority to deploy his officials for accuracy of the data before other institutions start challenging or questioning the data, like the way how we are discussing now. And of course, this means also UNUMIS will not be basing its own data. UNUMIS will be relying on the data of RRC, and RRC is a complete government entity that needs a primary commitment of the government leadership at state level, like Lobong as a minister, as a governor, and then the minister that is concerned, either Minister of Local Government or Minister of Peace Building, to ensure that they have honest staff, honest public officials that are registering. Because sometimes I will tell you, chiefs can manipulate numbers, or headmen or person who is entrusted to hold a responsibility of registering can manipulate numbers. So the question of transparency and accountability, the question of check and balance is needed primarily from the authorities so that we have accurate data. But the concept that we don't want to have IDPs come is much more linked to how much security and safety have we provided to make sure people to go back to their villages. Because also the culture of you integrating IDPs into the host communities, it's not going to be easy if the host community identify themselves as a farmers, their intention with cattle herders. Even if I go to my brother's house and still I expect cattle herders to come and pass from here, I better run to Obama Village camp in a hotel to stay there. And when I ensure that I'm in the hotel and I can see there's a presence of police around the hotel, I feel more safe that my life than staying in my brother's house, which is close to the hotel. So it's a question of safety and security will make us easily avoid camps. And there's a positive case study in Western Equatoria. But then when the LRA were attacking the communities, IDPs of Western Equatoria are integrated. Even during the 2013 class are integrated. Why? Because they feel that if they go to the house of their friends or their relatives, there's a security and safety. So it's a question of security and safety that will make us avoid camps. But as long the host community feel not secured individually or as a community, they really can't avoid camp establishment as a structure that the state may come and protect them.
The Commissioner of Mongu County has urged the population to return to their homes, stating that the area is safe, while the chiefs from their area are denying this. Who is telling the truth?
To be honest with you, I so much believe on the chiefs, because the chiefs are on daily contact with the presence of individuals in the communities, and the chiefs can see still individual armed cattle herders passing around. And let me tell you, one thing in Magui that describe what is called presence of safety and security, it is really one, absence of people as armed moving within the community. This is one. Two, seeing police patrolling the areas of the community, so that when the community see there's a police moving around, they feel, oh, now we are safe, there's a security. And ensuring that a small incident, automatically, the principle of rule of law hold or take cost, that if somebody is killed, the perpetrator is already arrested and then brought to book. That's where the question of safety and security is. But this is not happening in the villages. Still, there are people who are roaming in the villages with cattle armed, and that a single person can, as armed single person in a community, can offer a fear of 1 month to 100 persons. So the question is, how do we avoid the presence of people who are armed, who we can't identify who they are outside the community so they can have it? So a commissioner can speak that there's a peace, there's a security from a generic point of view. But when you go to the chiefs who are living in the villages, who are going to their farms, they can still see that some people go to their farms and they disappear, or as they're going to their farms, they find their dead bodies. So that is still posed a threat that peace and security is not closed. It is still far. So the question is, I wish that, and of course, I interacted with Commissioner. Commissioner is somebody I respected, somebody practical. And my call for Commissioner is that always you need to be practical. He needs to go to the villages together with the chiefs and check and make sure, because his presence in the villages encouraged people to go, and presence of police patrolling encouraged people to go. UNMIS is thinking about putting what they call temporary protection base, what is called TOB. It's been put in Tombra, it's been put in Tonj. Maybe one of the things that we will urge the leadership of His Excellency Governor Lobong is to establish a TOB in Magui, and the TOB will help in a joint patrol together with South Sudan Police Service to show communities that we are here for your safety and your protection, and people will return automatically. I don't think that anybody like to live in a camp in this particular season of agriculture. And as I repeat, is that in Magui, agriculture is a source of income. Everybody want to go and farm and send a bit of food to Juba to earn income for buying other social services, like either paying school fees of children or buying medicine. So I think it's a question of responsibility. Commissioner need to tell the truth, because the chiefs are really with the people, and the chiefs are telling the reality. They are seeing on a daily basis lives as their part.
History indicates the issue of cattle raiding has been an ongoing problem dating as far back as during the turn of the century, when Southern Sudanese ethnic groups would raid each other. What are the long-term solutions to cattle raiding and in migration within the country?
I think one, recently it became a bit complicated because we're using model weapons. Those days we're using traditional weapons where the harm we shall inflict during raiding is not as big as now, where we're using AK-47. So it means what? It means the state needs to start taking a different policy direction. Policy direction like what? For example, right now we need to start having policies. We need to start having decisions that it respond to cattle migration. It respond to threats that cattle communities are facing. For example, when there's a drought, what policy do we have to have cattle keepers to move their cattle to an area where there's no drought? When there's a flood, how do we do? So we need to discuss, we need to start having a proper policy approach on how do we handle cattle migration and how do we respond to cattle raiding. And that's why one of the things I was proposing and I was advocating for is that actually within our police service, we need to start establishing a unit that is a preventive unit that respond to issues of cattle raiding. And as I said, there's no raid that happened without a prior information. Early warning traditionally exists in our communities. You will hear people saying there's this particular group of individuals mobilizing themselves. And the indication of the mobilization, as they're mobilizing, they're going to raid. And then if we have that information as prior incident, and we have a police unit that can go and deter this particular incident from happening, it happened. Like, for example, there is a happening in Jongole town in Baidit. The people were killed after actually all state officials having information that Baidit is going to be attacked by this particular community and we're going to lose lives. And you come to realize that after the incident, authorities are saying, like, look here, we can't respond because we have less number of police, they are not armed, they are weak. Now the question is, you are aware. The day when we say we're going to protest on the streets of Juba, when some people say we're going to get sit out, we see police in good uniform, good boots, good sticks. But why not to prevent violence happening like what's going on in Magui? When political leadership are under challenge, we see proper response of the states. And I remember one time, I think 2 years ago, there's another social movement which came up, which I don't know where they are. There's a group which call themselves Red Cat Movement. They say they're going to storm the Garang Mausoleum. We have seen mounted vehicles with military uniform patrolling the town. But why not the same vehicles being used to prevent our communities from killing themselves, since we have the prior data? So it's a clear indicator that the more the political leadership is under challenge, they protect themselves more faster than when our communities are facing threat of their safety and security. So for me, it's really an issue that, as history is saying, we need to see leadership that have a proper policy approach. Right now, the weakness of the leadership in the country at the various levels is that there's no policy approach towards mitigating or responding to this challenge that we call it as a cattle raiding, and specifically now we're using model arms. And I'll tell you, 3/4 of the rifles and the bullets used by the communities in cattle raiding are not coming from outside, they're from within. that means we have leakage within the stores of our law enforcement agencies, whether rivals under police or rivals under military or rivals under national security. And even we're wondering sometimes come to realize that rivals that are lately bought by the state for protecting politicians, you find in the hands of cattle raiders. Start asking yourself, what's going on? What's happening? These guns is very expensive, bought to protect political leadership, to offer citizens, but now being used for raiding cattle. People are shooting themselves and start asking, what about the bullets? Who supplied them? So that means, tells you very clear, there's a weakness, there's a leakage in the security system that is fueling cattle raiding for using model weapons. So for me, the short-term solution is have Ministry of Interior establish a unit that deter or prevent these cattle incidents from happening, the cattle raiding incidents from happening, and deter whoever want to take the law into the hand, but also make sure that there's a proper rule of law, because part of this crisis is absence of rule of law, that instead of rule of law are not functioning in the country. And thirdly, it's also name and shame those ones who are supplying ammunitions, because they are known. They're not invisible. They are known and their names are clear. Name and shame them and punish them.
What is the role of the Council of States in mitigating the conflict or crisis that is taking place in Eastern Equatoria State at the state level itself?
One of the best practices of Council of States as our Senate is that normally they summon governors to come and explain to them what is the state strategy in preventing violence or in mitigating this violence. And some members in the Council of States are members who are seen politically to some governors as party politics is concerned. They see some members in the Council of States as junior members of the party. So some leaders see themselves as senior members of the party. So they can't really pay allegiance to respond to the Council of States in terms of someone by somebody who is a junior in the party. And now he got a responsibility. The Council of States summoning me, or sometimes I'm summoned by a political leader that comes from different parties. So the summon, it's just a matter of talks, like the way we're speaking without any impact. So always Council of States summon leaders for debates, you find debates, and you don't see a very concrete resolutions coming out. And even if the resolutions comes out, there's no funding, because conflict prevention is not funded like security response. Our government put a lot of money for security response to incidents, while our government put less money for conflict prevention. The only thing is that you debate, you come with resolution, the Council of States. Now to translate this resolution into an action require state to put money. And one of the biggest things that the Council of States is really battling with is whether there's a political interest in the Ministry of Finance and the leadership of the country to inject money on the resolution they adopt in the Council of States as a response. Like recently, I will tell you an example. Council of States is battling between the tension between Unity State and Ruang administrative areas. The governor of Unity was summoned, and then the administrator of Ruang was summoned here. They debated, resolutions were taken, but you don't see any move like those resolutions are translated to action. So it's the same thing with the situation in Mongu, or with the situation in Tonj, or with the situation which is merging up in Tombra. Also, Tombra is developing, it's becoming more violent than before. So it's a question of, you need to have a political leadership that have the will to put money to fund conflict prevention. Because you can hear South Sudanese, wherever you go to them to come and say, oh, like in Mongu, when I was in Mongu, people say, you know, this is our own crisis. Some politicians are telling me this. This is our own crisis. We need to sort it out with our own solutions. We don't want interference of anybody coming in the name of UN or in the name of international organization to offer us way how to resolve it. But I used to tell them, look here, if you're saying this is a South Sudanese problem, requires South Sudanese solution, you need to finish it up. The equation is not finished. The equation is not enough. You need to say, this is a South Sudanese problem. We need to offer with South Sudanese solutions, but you need to use South Sudanese money. So South Sudanese problem with South Sudanese solution with South Sudanese money. Why do you want to beg money for funding a conference? While you're arguing, no, you know, your foreigners are interfering with us, but you go and beg them from one hand, we need money for you to organize for us a workshop. Why don't you use our treasury to fund this peace conference? So that we see it's a South Sudanese problem with South Sudanese solutions with South Sudanese money. So you can't create an equation that I'm a South Sudanese and find my own solutions, but using foreign money. There's no free money in this world. So put the money of South Sudan so that you have it completely as South Sudanese solutions with South Sudanese money and with South Sudanese mindset in terms of offering solutions. But unfortunately, we go and beg UN, give us money for conferences, but don't interfere. As people who are coming from these UN agencies or these international organizations or civil society, don't interfere, because we need to find our own solution. But find your own solution with your own money. So for me, a question is that we need a political leadership that is ready to put the value of SSP for conflict prevention rather than responding to security threats.
A conflict resolution meeting is planned for this week. Who are the participants? What are the primary issues that will be discussed at the meeting? And in your opinion, will there be tangible outcomes from the meeting itself?
Obviously, I'm one of the person who is behind pushing the concept of the conflict resolution. Our target is that this conflict resolution, we want to have it at a different layers level. The first target, we're targeting the political elites, that are different political institutions at national level and at state level. And the idea is that we need to organize a meetings where the leaders from the hardest communities and the leaders from the pastoralist communities sit down and argue and distance themselves from politicizing this particular situation. Because even if we go to the communities, we organize dialogue, peace building dialogue. If we don't gain political consensus to accept whatever the communities agree among themselves as a solution, can be politicized. So the first is our target, the political elites. So the political elites from the pastoralist community and from the farmers communities are the target that are going to be there. The question is whether those decisions will be respected. We have reached now in the situation of Mongu, we have reached to emotional moment. We have reached to the level where there's a hate messages going on, there's a hostile propaganda going on, there's a misinformation going on, there's disinformation going on. And mainly who are these people who are playing these negative things are the elites that we need to target them the first, because it's just a phone call to a meeting in the community from one of political leader, either from the hardest community or from the pastoralists, will distort that meeting. So first, those who have the access to complicate things, we need to deal with them. And this is the meeting that we're going to organize next week and make sure that we reach political consensus among the leaders. Of course, we already start getting signals coming up from the pastoralists, from the farmers communities, that no negotiation with cattle herders until they leave our land. We don't leave our land, we're not ready to negotiate. Those are the slogans we're getting it. So those slogans are going to give us hard time. Obviously, it's not going to be soft. It's not going to be easy things. Is that we're going to respond to that. But keeping silent is escalating the situation. At least if we speak to each other, we can de-escalate. But also keeping quiet, it gives chances for hostile propaganda, hate speech, misinformation, disinformation take charge. When we talk, we at least correct these wrong information and misinformation and hate speech that are going on and hostile propaganda is going on. So that is the idea of the meeting. So my belief is that that meeting can offer us a room of building political consensus for a non-violent resolution of the dispute or the violence between the cattle herders and the farmers of Mongu, but at the same time also will give us an answer to what role can the state play to protect both the farmers from the herders and the herders when they're leaving, they're going back to the community. Because my fear is, as the cattle herders are leaving Mongu, they have to pass through central Equatoria, they will face some raiders. As they enter into Jongole, they will face some raiders. So if the state never take responsibility to protect them, even the interest of going back will be minimum. They will rotate within the community, say, okay, we're going, they can move out from this community, go and establish themselves in another community. But if they want to go in peace, then the state need to offer them that passage. So I think this part of the resolution of the meeting that we're aiming to reach to, but also at the same time, holding the three governors accountable. Because the governor of Eastern Equatoria, the governor of Central Equatoria, the governor of Jongole, how much money are they putting to really find solution to this? But I will tell you, if you see their convoys, their visits, it's a hell of money. These three governors, you find one governor is moving from one area to another, the escort is too big with enough protection, but when asked him put money in order to allow police to move together with people, they say, no, we're waiting for central government. But when you're moving with a convoy, why are you not waiting for central government? Why are you scooping money from the state treasury to go for a visit, while when asked to scoop the same money, give to police in order to be present in the community? You say, no, we're waiting for Minister of Finance. But for yourself, when you're moving, you don't wait for Minister of Finance. It's really contradictory. So part of this meeting is to find answers to the political leaders of the country that they should use money that they're using for their missions. They should use the same money to prevent violence. So we hope that it really results. Of course, we are dealing with politicians. You don't guarantee politicians' mindset, and specifically when politicians love their personal gain more than the safety and protection of their own citizens. We're going to find it hard, but we'll try our level best.
We wish you success in the upcoming meeting that will be held, and hopefully tangible results will come out of it. We've been joining the program by Mr. Edmund Yakani. Thank you for joining me here on Beyond the Headlines. And our viewers, thank you for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sunrise Media.